are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
Arjun, I was just thinking about like this time last year, you were at the summit dinner.
Yeah.
And so we'd met, I think, couple months before that. And so I think as a starting off point, I know I had no idea kind of what PGA was into. I mean, I had ideas, but can you kind of give everybody kind of a broad overview in terms of like what PGA does? Because I think people have ideas, but they don't know specifically.
Yeah, no problem. It's also an interesting week because what's today? Wednesday? Probably after this, I would have tonight flown to Wisconsin for the Ryder Cup, right? So the Ryder Cup was supposed to be this week, and we've postponed it to 21. So the PGA of America is a pretty unique organization. Most people know us for running some of probably three of golf's biggest events, the PGA Championship, the Ryder Cup, which I mentioned, and the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, which will be in Atlanta next year. So we can all look forward to that, which is the preeminent major in women's golf. But really at our core, we're a not-for-profit trade association. So we're a 501c6 of 29,000 local golf pros. So just like any other trade association, that of people that are really at the heart of driving this about $84 billion industry forward. So if you golf or you don't golf, it's fine. But when you walk into a facility, it'll be anybody from your golf coach to your golf shop, the pro shop manager, to the general manager of the resort, the director of golf operations. So like any other trade association, we're a certifying educational body that helps member benefits. But in the innovation area, specific to that, the way we think about our lives or our mission every day is how do we really raise the industry? How do we grow the game? And how do we help our members' lives just on an everyday basis? So what we think about from an innovation perspective is kind of broad level, but the thought is there's a number of innovations of products or services in other industries, and we as the PGA are uniquely positioned to be a catalyst to bring those services or solutions into the industry, hopefully driving value to that company, but also driving value to an industry as a whole, right?
Yeah. No, it was interesting. Like I think when we first started talking too, just understanding all the even how you need to look at setting up for a tour, for a tournament, like the physical aspect of setting up and kind of the level of temporary structures that are put out there, and how you have to think about that. I mean, you're building a little mini city for a very short period of time on a facility that you care about, foot traffic you care about. You can't come in and disrupt it. You have, this isn't a fracking site where no one cares. You have to take great care. And how do y'all look at that? Like, how do you look at working with industry and thinking about different ways to, what's that scale? I think people don't realize behind the scenes. We just show up for the party. We don't know all the things that happened ahead of time.
Well, so I don't have the full answer because I just show up for the party typically too. Luckily, we have a brilliant colleague, Kerry Haig, who's our chief championships officer, who's done this for generations, right? And he has this unique ability to kind of walk onto a site and see it, like just kind of like can visualize it in his mind, how the course will work from a player perspective, but also how things will operate. Now that's a brilliant artist, right? It's mind, and can we combine that with some science to make it even that much better, right? But there are real points, right? Like at a Ryder Cup is very different from most other golf events. At most golf majors, or championships, you'll have people playing almost on every hole, right? In the Ryder Cup, it's a team-based event, so you'll have situations where all of the fans are crowded around maybe four, groups of players, And what that means is breakage points, right? Like there's points of traffic that create real issues, right? Where do people go? How do they move? All those things. So yeah, in essence, we have an entire kind of landscape design, industrial design group really thinking through how it works. And that goes from anywhere, we moved our PGA championship to May a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be in August. When we did that, one of the things we had to think about was like, how will the weather be with the May event? And it's not how will the weather be in mid-May, but how will the weather be 3 months beforehand when we have to break ground and build all those structures, right? So as we look at last year's event in Bethpage and Long Island, it's like, oh no, is the ground going to be frozen? And we don't have actually an ability to build structures. So, that becomes a real question, right? We constantly think about, we have a limited number of events, and we are building temporary structures every time, right? And that is a really costly endeavor, right? Are there opportunities to create structures that are more modular, right? That can be moved from location to location, that can be capitalized over a number of years. Right now, it's a lot of tenting and things like that, right? But as companies that you all work with kind of figure out solutions there, I'd love to see what we can do in that space.
Yeah. Do you see with, even, everybody talks about reopening. Reopening is going to be different. We're still going to think in terms of density. I've talked to friends that own sports teams, and they're thinking about their stadiums, and they're thinking about, do we need to start redesigning? Is social? We tend, because of the economics, like how many people can we cram into any facility? Are y'all starting to rethink kind of how that? Because you have space. Unlike a stadium, you guys have some latitude to play with. A stadium has its fixed form factor, and they have to decide whether they're going to get rid of seats and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we start from a position of strength for sure, right? We're outside. That's the first and foremost thing, right? We have, as you said, not as defined of a structure, or can move, right? As I just said, we change actually on a year-by-year basis. So we haven't necessarily are set in some capitally intensive kind of design, right? We have the benefit to move. So yeah, certainly. Right now we're at a no fans situation, right? But the future will tell, right? We're kind of thinking through and preparing for different scenarios. So, are we at fans but limited fans? Are we at fans but testing, right? How do you move them through the gates, right? If you're doing testing, transportation is a big thing too, right? So next year we have that PGA Championship in Kiowa, which in itself is an island and is difficult to get in and out. And we traditionally have shuttle buses bringing people in and out. What's the future of that, right? Is it a bunch of open rickshaws? I don't know, right? There's got to be something.
Where do I get the segue?
Yeah, I don't know, right? It's this mass partnership with one of the scooter companies, right? I don't know, right? So we just got to think through those. But I think what we've learned through COVID, I would say that I've learned this professionally and I've learned it personally too, is you like more and more information kind of comes up every day, every week, every month, and you kind of just have to maximize your options. Right? Just keep on iterating and keep on giving yourself options, and that lends itself to, or at least like lengthen the time that you can have for options, and then it gives you the best position for success.
How are you seeing? It's definitely from a sport perspective. It's a foursome, so you get to pick 3 other people that maybe you're comfortable with. Social, I'm not playing indoor soccer anytime soon. There's certain sports that are not conducive to the situation that we're in, but clearly golf, right? I mean, I have to find three people I can trust to go play. I can pretty much social distance from the guys in front of me or the people behind me or whatnot. Are y'all seeing any shifts in terms of on the consumer side of people playing more or less?
Yeah.
In theory, it feels like it should be unaffected, right? In theory.
Yeah, so we were proactive with this. We kind of recognized that we were starting from a position of strength, right? And we recognized that people needed people, right? We're by nature, kind of a herd animals, right? And how do we give people that opportunity to keep them, frankly, mentally, safe and give them reprieve? And that's what we felt golf could do during this period of time. So we actually worked with the CDC and created a series of guidelines that we brought through with them and other medical professions, and brought that to our golf professional community so that we could reopen courses in a safe and responsible way. And what we're seeing is a big uptick in golfing, both in terms of rounds, in retail, in memberships, right? You just, we talk about before the call, a boom in second houses, right? There's also, similarly become a little bit of a boom in golf memberships and just play in general. So people who used to play that didn't play anymore have come back to the game. People who are playing more. And then in some cases, people who've never played really are doing it. So last weekend, for example, me and 3 other friends in the neighborhood here played at Candler Park Municipal. And it was great, right? Like, we're not in a pod, but the 3 of us could be outside, or the 4 of us then could be outside walking and enjoy ourselves and feel somewhat normal for a couple hours, right? Right. And that's usually a struggle. And it kind of ended it and was like, we should do this more because it feels a lot better than sitting on a porch 6 feet apart, right? And having a beer. So, so we've seen an uptick for sure. And it's really our responsibility on how to capitalize on that uptick in terms of making sure the people who didn't play before keep playing. On the other side of this, the people who've come back to the game, how do we make sure we retain them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's been a good part. From a physical facility perspective, you do have some more challenges in things like the clubhouse, right, in certain facilities. So they're affected just like a restaurant would be or any other kind of indoor location.
How do you view things like Topgolf? Is that good for the sport or?
Yeah, it's great. Like,
totally independent or?
Yeah. I talk about it as golf's greatest sampling program, right? If you think about just a general consumption funnel, it brings people in. And the story I tell people is my wife's little cousin was staying with us for months and studying for the medical boards here. I had a little time off in the afternoon. I said, hey, do you want to go play at the same course that I just mentioned a second ago? And he goes, okay. Right. And we get to the first tee and I look at him and I was like, wait a second, have you ever played before? And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, sure. I played at Topgolf before. And I was like, okay, awesome. It's gonna be a little bit different. Might feel a little more intimidating because there's more grass, but don't worry, we're just going for a walk. Right. And so why I give that example is like, playing at Topgolf gave him the confidence to say yes to me, which then sent him to a 9-hole municipal course, which then, he gets a little more comfortable and then he goes, further on. So yeah, our old CEO always talked about like horse for basketball, right? So like if someone asked you what you did last weekend, you played horse, you just say you played basketball. Right? Like you don't go like I played 3-on-3 or I played horse or I played some other game. Like, so for golf, like golf is golf in our mind. It doesn't have to be 18 hole, just like basketball doesn't have to be 5-on-5 full court.
Yeah. The example I use is my 80-year-old mother picked up a driver at my son's 16-year-old at his birthday party at Topgolf. She would have never
Right.
She would live the rest of her life never having touched a golf club.
Exactly.
And was zero intimidated. And, I don't know that she'll go out and play, but at least it was exposure. Like, I think for her, it was never understanding, like, I don't get why people are into this,
Right.
kind of that association of like why this is interesting. And she's, swung.
And she crushed a driver further than your 16-year-old, right? And then everybody just ragged him the rest of the day.
The 6-year-old's trying to hit it hard. Grandma's just like swinging through.
Grandma got contacted and went further.
So how do y'all look at, like, clearly, something like Topgolf, super technical, there's like a screen and a this and a that. And, I would say that the Gen Z and further, they're not just digital natives, they're multi-screen digital natives, right? They have 10 different screens going at once in their lives. How are y'all looking at, how do you look at integrating some of the technology kind of into the course, and, versus thinking very traditionally about like, well, no, we're not going to do any of that. I mean, are y'all looking at integrating some of the gameplay technology in?
Yeah. So a lot of kind of questions there. So from a championship perspective, for sure. Actually, we work with, sometimes like a top tracer to look at the range and help that kind of thought or experience. The players themselves are very maniacal about the type of technologies they use. We'll work, in China, we just put up an academy in Hong Kong, actually. And that is, we installed Top Tracer technology, which is owned by Topgolf, right? So people like those types of, it's clear that people like to see how they're performing, how they're doing. It helps. One of the things we're doing, a big initiative we have right now, is we're actually, we recently brought our digital rights back in-house, so PGA.com. So PGA.com used to be a joint venture with Turner, and they did great for a number of years, but we decided that we wanted to bring it back in-house, really with the idea of focusing around connecting our coaches with consumers, right? And as we look at that, one of the things we talk about is there's a number of technologies that coaches use, and there's a number of technologies that consumers use. And how do we bring that in to create more of a bird's eye view, right? For consumers and coaches. As a coach, and someone could be like, okay, this is how they can look at the students round, right? Like the last week, and see what they've done well or done poorly, and communicate with them about it. And, so, and cater the next lesson towards that. And vice versa, the consumer can then say, hey, I've got this technology, Arcos, which is one, which is more of a shot tracker technology, or a couple other things, or this is my handicap or whatnot, and kind of bring them together and see and understand their own game to help develop themselves too. So yeah, I think we think, technology is additive to it all. In golf, that's why there's probably so many, because golfers are pretty intense about anything they can have to improve their game just that amount.
A little bit, yeah. It's interesting. I tell this story quite often now, that I have an investor who's probably edging 80 these days and has invested with me for 20 something years. And about 2 years ago, I sent him a Zoom link and said, hey, why don't we do a Zoom call? He's a big fan of me jumping on a plane to see him, or he'll come down. And he literally like cursed me out. He's like, what the hell is this Zoom thing? Why can't you just set up a conference bridge like regular people?
Right.
Why do you have to do all these weird things? You're not going to get me on camera. I don't know if my laptop has a camera. Like, just all this pushback,
Yeah.
And then post-COVID, he's like, KP, this Zoom thing is fantastic.
Wish I invested in them earlier.
He's like, you should try to invest in them. And I'm like, that ship sailed a little bit.
Yeah.
But I asked him, like, well, why all of a sudden? He's like, well, I'm interacting with my grandkids and my kids. Like, it's become a fabric in his life. Like, he probably would never have had a golf pro dial in on a video call before, but now he's probably okay with it. If I can talk to a pro that's not at my club, because maybe I don't like the guy at my club anymore.
Yeah.
I want a different opinion. That all of a sudden you have a guy like that that's willing to spend money for a digital experience maybe never before would have. So I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think technology adoption has changed in golf with golf professionals as well as golf consumers. So we have an interesting dichotomy where we have the core of golf, the core golfer, or the person that's our core golf professional is an older demographic, right? Our core golf consumer is an older demographic. But we also at the same time need to bring new people in, right? So you kind of have this pacing question of how do you build in new technology and bring those kind of services in, but you build it in a way that's not, the older demographics aren't going to be resistant to it, which means sometimes it's not good enough for the younger demographics, right? So you have that, but what I would say is it's interesting. I think about, you said grandma, so I'll just say my mom, right? Like we talk about, would she have used Uber 4 years ago? No. She'll use Uber very easily now, right? Or Lyft or whomever. And so, or like pre-COVID, would she have ever thought of ordering her groceries online? Right? No, but now she's uses Instacart, right? And she's probably very adept at this point. So I think there was already a change that was happening, and then COVID just accelerated it because unfortunately, older populations are more vulnerable, right, to the disease. So I think that's just created an acceleration of use of or adoption of technology.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I saw the e-commerce stats over the last couple of quarters, you just we're in a bubble, being in technology and VC. We're like, of course, everybody's using these, and you find out it turns out nobody's using 10%. Targets with their e-commerce traffic was less than 10% of overall sales, and now it's 20 something.
Right.
So a lot of the folks here at Summit are either from industry, so architects, engineers, contractors, and then I would say the other half are more technologists that are trying to serve the built environment. Are there initiatives you have going on that, I would say every startup that's on this call is interested in selling you something? Are there areas that you could see, are there areas that you're looking to solicit people that have interesting technologies and things like that? Are there areas of focus?
Yeah, no problem. So I'd say one space is landscape, right? If you talk about architecture, right? If you think about what golf is, and of course, grass is especially crop, and from an architectural standpoint, that's what a course depends on, right? That beauty. So I'm not sure if that's also included within the group on I know there's a lot of build architecture, but if there's also, I guess, the outside aspect, that's certainly something of interest. And that's even what we talked about on a championship perspective, is to be able to visualize how people are going to utilize an outdoor environment is critical, right? The other thing I would say is just think about us as a hospitality business, right? Think about the industry. So there are 14,000 golf facilities and 16,000 courses in the U.S. alone, which is about 40% of the world's population. Our members run the buying decisions for about 10,000 of those facilities, right? Are there ways from a build perspective that you're approaching hotels or restaurants or other kind of like-minded businesses in the hospitality space that can be translated here? Because what does a clubhouse include? It includes a restaurant, it includes a pool, it includes waiting staff, it includes locker rooms, like a gym, it includes a lot of those components. In some cases, it does include rooms, right? but includes a lot of those components that a lot of the companies on the call are probably already talking to other resorts and complexes, right? So even the construction phase is interesting. Even, are there interesting finance products, right? Golf is a capitally intensive business, right? Are there new, unique models around financing that they should be exploring, right?
Very cool. Well, great. Any questions for me?
That's other than your beard. No, I guess I'd say from your perspective, hearing from me, where do you see the biggest opportunities for the golf industry, or where I can add value from the startup ecosystem?
No, I think it's interesting because in many ways, you guys are, we think about design, build, operate in terms of life cycle of an asset, right? And I think how you guys can contemplate designing, both on the temporary structures for tours as well as golf courses, how you actually build them out, and then just how you continue to manage them. We have a company right now that does like water leak detection, so that if, which is super important in a high rise, but there's aspects, and I think in many ways you guys are a big specialty client for a startup. I don't know that in our space that there's startups that would say our first market is to go after golf courses.
Yeah.
Right. They're not thinking that.
And I don't probably want them, frankly, because why I'm interested in this theory is like there's greater scale in the other industries,
Exactly.
kind of leveraging that scale and bringing it into here.
Yeah. And so I think there's definitely a lot of interest there. We continue to see a lot of use of computer vision. There's a company in our incubator that does drone-based surveying. So drones will go out and put survey stakes out there, things like that. So thinking about how you leverage, I think other than the movie industry, drone construction is the second highest user of drone technology.
Yeah. I've started to see a decent amount of drone or kind of single man aircrafts or something like that, where it's for ag, for agriculture in general, in terms of putting the right cameras in there and being able to do quick flyovers and understanding the health of your farm. So it's like the same ways, like can a quick flyover be done to understand the health of your course and the trouble spots, right?
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of that, and then we're seeing a lot around this idea of that assets are these like living things that change every month, every year. So instead of having to send, y'all might even do it. You might send someone out that goes and walks all the sidewalks to make sure that every cobblestone, like there's no safety hazards and things like that. So we're seeing some technology. There's a company later today that's using computer vision to analyze bridges for safety.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is you don't need an engineer to go out there and take the pictures. Anybody can go out there and take the pictures, but it can kind of time lapse, year after year, month after month, what's going on with that, and understand, when is it time to send someone out to go look at this? So,
right. From an operate perspective, that's an interesting space too, right? We always talk about, operational costs of managing a golf course in the facility, right? Mm-hmm. So from an operations perspective, again, you think about a clubhouse, no different than a restaurant, hotel kind of structure. Are there ways, or are there technologies or innovations being developed to help make those efficient so that you can spend more on the guest experience, right?
All right, very cool. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Glad to see you guys are doing good and adapting.
Yeah, we all are, and certainly if anybody on the call would like to contact me, I don't know the best way to do it, but feel free to give them my information.
I will do that. Yeah, reach out to someone on the Shadow team if you're interested in talking to Arjun. All right, man. It was great seeing you.
Take care. Thank you all. Bye.